Hey, I'm Brennan. Welcome to my channel where we talk about finance, real estate, and how to get wealth. Today, we're going to recap the podcast that I did with real estate investor Allan Woodruff. He's got 40 years experience investing in real estate with over 60 rental properties in his portfolio. We're going to go over self-directed IRAs, creative real estate investing, and why he has a purpose behind everything that he buys. All that and more, stay tuned. All right, so the first thing that we're going to go over is the self-directed IRA. This is a tool that Allan has used to buy many properties and basically pay no taxes like you would in a traditional retirement account. So when you are trying to understand a self-directed IRA, it's first better to know what a traditional IRA is. An individual retirement account. It can be thought of in two buckets. You have your traditional IRA and you have your Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is where you pay the taxes now and then it grows tax-free and you can pull it out when you're 59 and a half, not having to pay any of the capital gains. The traditional IRA means that you pay the taxes later. So you put it in the account without paying the taxes and then you pull it out after it grows and you would pay the taxes later. So that could be advantageous one way or the other. The Roth would be if you are planning on earning more money later in your career, you might want to pay the taxes up front so that you are being taxed in a lower tax bracket and you can pull it out when you're 59 and a half in a higher tax bracket and not pay the taxes. And the traditional IRA would make sense maybe if you're going to earn less at the end of your career or you're trying to get your taxable income down right now, because all that money contributed would not be counted as income. So you could, in essence, bring down your taxable income by contributing it to your traditional IRA or okay. So what is a self-directed IRA? Well, in theory, it's the same thing, but it opens up a wide variety of investment options for you. And most people, or at least I hadn't heard of this, because when you're learning about retirement accounts or where to invest your money, the people that are teaching it or telling it usually have some skin in the game. They're either going to make a commission or they want you to buy their whatever mutual fund that their brokerage is offering. And they don't bring up that there's a third option, which is the self-directed IRA. Now, there's two ways you can go about this. You can use a custodian, and there's companies that will set these up for you, and it makes sure that you're compliant with the IRS, which we'll get to later. Companies like Entrust, Alto, NewView, Equity Trust, Directed IRA. I'll put some links inside of the Get Wealth community. For those of you who are following, we'll have all that information inside for free in the resources category. You can find the link below in the description. So the custodian will be the one that will submit the funds. They will approve the transactions. They'll make sure that everything is compliant, and there's a little bit more paperwork and it can take a little bit more time. So if you're planning on investing money into something and not thinking about it, more of a passive investment, that could be a good option because it generally takes a little bit of the burden off of your plate to make sure that you're not doing a prohibited transaction or self-dealing, which we'll get to. Now, the other way is a checkbook LLC. You're going to open up an LLC that's owned by your IRA. Your LLC will have a bank account where your retirement funds will be deposited, from which you can write checks to buy investments or wire money. Now, this is going to be a much quicker process. Let's say that you find a real estate deal that you're going to buy as a fix and flip, and you only have a few days before the earnest money goes hard and you need to send it to escrow now. Well, with a checkbook LLC, you're just going to write the check, you're going to send the wire, and the deal's going to be done the same day. So it's a much quicker way, but the burden is more on you to make sure that you're not self-dealing. So let's get into what are the things we need to be careful of when using a self-directed IRA. So when you're buying assets with a self-directed IRA, you want to be sure that you're not doing what's called self-dealing. In essence, think of it as with your traditional retirement accounts, that's for retirement. That's why you get all these tax benefits, is you can put the money in there and you can take advantage of these benefits that the IRS is giving you for investing your money. Well, if you're going to go buy a rental property, you can't be benefiting from that before you're supposed to. So for example, you can't buy a piece of real estate and then let your kids live in it or your spouse live in it. You can't even work on the property yourself because they don't want you benefiting from this property in any way until you've reached the required age of 59 and a half. There's also prohibited transactions. You can't buy something that is in any way connected to a business partner, your spouse, your kids. same situation. These are all disqualified people. Essentially, if you or your family touch it, prohibited transaction. If you're benefiting from it in any way, prohibited transaction. But all that being said, imagine you buy a rental property and you own that property for 30 years. That thing has doubled in value. You've paid off the mortgage completely. All of the rental income is tax-free, along with all of the equity that you gain from that property. And it's essentially just like owning that property in a retirement account. So there's some huge advantages to growing your wealth tax-free. For example, if you were to invest $50,000 and assume a 10% return over 30 years, that number is going to be around $870,000. And if you were to not have that in a self-directed IRA or an IRA, when you pull that money out, you're going to pay capital gains tax, and it could be around $200,000 less than what you otherwise would have been able to take out if you didn't have it in some sort of an account. Now, with real estate, there are other options. You could do what's called a 1031 exchange, which essentially delays the taxes that you're going to be paying, but it's not going to be a completely tax-free. Eventually, you're going to have to pay those taxes down the line. Now, there are ways to get around that with putting it in a trust and delaying it until you die and then passing it on to your kids. There's ways around it. But this way, with your self-directed IRA, essentially, you could keep all those profits completely tax-free. So definitely a very powerful tool. And there's going to be some more resources on that inside of the Get Wealth community. So definitely check that out. The link is in the description. We have interviews with people like Allan, other entrepreneurs and business owners. There's live Q&As. The resources from the guests are going to be inside the resource vault inside of the community, such as companies that you could use to set up a self-directed IRA and some of the paperwork that Allan talked about as far as investing in subject to real estate, which we're going to get into next. So the next strategy that we talked about in the podcast is creative finance real estate investing. This is essentially a strategy that opens up much more opportunity of buying properties that otherwise somebody wouldn't be able to buy with the traditional methods. For example, if you were going to go buy a rental property 10 years ago or in 2020 when interest rates were 2%, you could do that with a bank loan. You could go get a loan from the bank, put 20% down. The payment on your mortgage would be low enough that after capital expenditures, repairs, insurance, and management fees, you could still cash flow $500 a month. The property value was skyrocketing and everybody was making money. Well, now, today, things are a little bit different. Interest rates are higher, and that same mortgage payment is now not going to be able to cover the rent, is not going to be able to cover the cost of the mortgage. It's either going to be the same or less, leaving you negative cash flow, especially after paying for the other costs that are associated with owning your rental property. So you might think that you just can't buy one. Well, not according to creative finance. This basically says we're going to figure out a way to get you the price that you want as long as you give us the terms that we need in order to make it cash flow. So, for example, in the podcast, we talked about a seller that wanted to move to the Philippines. He didn't care how he got it, but he wanted his $100,000 in cash. Now, he had a loan on his property that was about $280,000 cash. So he wanted $380,000. I might be remembering the numbers wrong, but essentially that was the idea. So what we said is, well, we can't give you $380,000 cash, but really what you're saying is you need $100,000, regardless of if that pays off your current mortgage or not. As long as you have that $100,000 like you would if we just paid the whole thing off and then gave you 100, you would still have that much cash. So what can we do in this scenario? Well, we can do what's called buying the property subject to the existing loan. So that's what we did. We put the property under contract, put the property in escrow, and organized it with the purchase agreement so that we would be buying it subject to the existing loan. That means the title of the property would transfer, but the loan would stay in the seller's name. Now, this is completely legal and completely okay, and people have been doing this forever. And how it works is the seller wasn't going to buy a new house. He was just going to, go live in the Philippines. All he needed was his cash, and that's all we had to do. So the purchase price was, let's say it was $380. We left the loan in place for $280, and then Allan was able to bring $100,000, just $100,000, not the full amount, because the loan is not being paid off. So we only need 100 more to get to 380. And Allan brought that $100,000 to escrow. The seller got the $100,000. Allan got the title of the property, and the bank loan stayed there. So what happens with the bank loan? Well, Allan continues to this day to make payments on that loan. So the lender doesn't care, right? Because they don't even know that this happened. And as long as the payment's being made, there's no reason to care or to look. The seller doesn't care because he doesn't need his debt to income ratio to be clean. He doesn't need to really worry about what's going on with that loan as long as it's being paid, because he just is planning to move to the Philippines to live off of the $100,000, whatever he's doing down there, or however he's doing that. That was essentially all he needed. So it can work. And also, if there is a situation where the seller does want to still buy another house, there is ways of making that work where you can still get a bank loan even though your other bank loan is in place. Now, when you're buying a property, a bank will look at a number of things. They'll look at your credit score. They'll look at your debt to income ratio. And if you have this other debt here, because your loan was never paid off, that you might think that would be counted against you. Well, if you can show that payments are being made, they will actually take that off of your debt to income ratio. So there are ways to work around that as well. And essentially, that's how it worked. He got his $100,000. The bank loan stayed in place, and Allan got the property and has a tenant in there. And the payments on the mortgage are low enough that he can continue to cash flow with operating it as a rental property. Now, another part of that deal was that I was the one that found the property, and we decided to put this all together, and I did what's called wholesaling. So I put the property under contract, and I basically assigned the rights to buy that contract at a higher price. So even I was able to walk away with $10,000 in this whole thing for finding and putting together the deal. So as you can see, the word creative finance is a powerful strategy to make a deal out of something that otherwise wouldn't have worked. Now, there's definitely a lot more knowledge and experience and research that needs to be done before you go out and do this tomorrow. But if you're interested in learning a little bit more about creative finance and want access to some of the paperwork that's associated with it, I'll have all that for free inside of the Get Wealth community. That's going to be in the description, and you can check that out right now. It's free for the first 100 members. Every week, we're talking to millionaires like Allan and their strategies that they're using to grow their wealth. So we'd love to have you in there, and let's get to the next part. So the last point that Allan made was purpose-driven investing. And this is important because it's a little less flashy, but I think it's proved to serve him well over the course of his investing career. Now, he talks about how when you get into it, it's all about, you want to make money, you want to be able to feed yourself. Sure, you got to figure that out. But really where most people fall off is there's no real purpose to why they're doing what they're doing. And for Allan, that was providing affordable housing to people that needed it and improving neighborhoods. And it felt like he was able to have an impact in people's lives and helping them have a home that they like and enjoy. And he was able to carry that through well beyond into his retirement years, where most people would consider to just, if you had that amount of money, just sit back and not do anything. Well, in Allan's terms, that's not really what retiring is. Retiring means you're essentially taking yourself out of commission, and he has a purpose behind what he does. And that's what's really led him to a lot of his success. So I think that's something that we can all learn. It's good to have the tactical strategies and to understand how to do certain things to amplify your wealth and grow it over time. But really, none of that really matters if there's not a clear purpose behind doing what you're doing. So that's going to sum it up for today. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. If you want to have direct access to people like Allan, other guests that come on my podcast that all are high net worth individuals, business owners, entrepreneurs. We have live Q&As, millionaire coffee hours, casual format where you just sit and talk with other people and grow your network. You can get all that and more for free inside of the Get Wealth community, including our resource vault with, it's growing with documents and resources and contracts and investment resources. For example, our ETF analyzer and budgets and everything that is finance related really is going to continue to grow inside of the resource vault, and the guests sometimes share things. So if you want those tips and insights and tricks and conversations, there's a group of like-minded individuals inside the Get Wealth community. Would love to have you in there. Please like and subscribe this podcast. And if you found any value in there, drop a comment, and we'll see you in the next one.